Allyn is a wonderful, wonderful person. She began reading tarot in 1971, and she was recognized as a certified tarot card reader by the American Tarot Association back in '99, and she's given a lot of readings, but she has an extremely thorough understanding of tarot and astrology, alchemy, because she's a member of the Church of Light, and she's going to share her expertise about hermeticism, as well as tarot, astrology, numerology, you name it. She has an incredible amount of knowledge to share with us.
Oh, well, lovely. Well, why don't you bring her out here and let's have an interview.
I will do. Allyn, how are you doing this evening?
Hi, I'm doing fine, Stephen. It's good to hear your voice, and hello to your colleagues.
Thank you. We're really excited to have you with us, Allyn. It's great to hear your voice as well, as always. And we've got a lot of questions for you, so I hope you're well rested.
Okay. Well, listen, let's start out by getting the pronunciation of my name. It is Allyn, like a man.
Allyn, it's really
but you can call me Allyn.
I've even spent time with you in New Mexico, but I always pronounce your name that way. It's embarrassing. Why don't you call me Bob?
Oh, it's okay.
You can call me Bob for the whole radio show, Allyn.
All right. No, it's fine. It's fine, Stephen.
Well, I want to ask you first, Allyn, about the origins of tarot. I've read a lot about the origins of tarot, but it's still just so steeped in mystery. Can you share with us your view on the origins and the source of this incredible tool?
Yeah, well, it's no wonder that it's a mystery to you, because it's a mystery to everyone. You know, there are about 1 million different tarot decks, I should say, on the market, literally 1 million. And with every tarot deck, there is a little booklet that claims that tarot comes from someplace or other, you know, ancient China, ancient India, you know, the Renaissance era, you know, just so many places. But what Egyptian tarot espouses, and it's they claim to be the oldest, or at least one of the oldest tarot traditions in history, and it originated according to oral tradition, and I say oral tradition because, you know, the paperwork's a little sketchy on this, but it goes back some 4,000 years ago in Egypt. And it is said to be part of the Corpus Hermeticum, or Hermetica. And Hermeticism is a set of philosophical and religious beliefs that are based primarily upon the writings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, who was supposedly a wise sage, an Egyptian priest, and some say a god, and who is commonly seen as the Egyptian god Thoth. And these beliefs have influenced Western magic traditions. And I would say that the three tenets of Hermeticism are that the universe is mental and held in the mind of the all. And when I say the all, I mean all in caps, the all, meaning perhaps the absolute. And that everything and everybody in the universe is part of the all. And the differences between the physical, astral, and spiritual are vibrational. And as a medium, which I heard you discuss earlier, Stephen, you're probably well aware of that. Who was Hermes Trismegistus? He's been likened to Thoth and Enoch, and the Greek god Hermes. And all of them were communicators with the divine, guiding souls in the afterlife, and deliverers of wisdom, writing, astrology, alchemy, and magic. Spells to magically protect objects is the origin of the term hermetically sealed. The writings of Hermes are known as Hermetica, and Hermetic tradition refers to alchemy, magic, and astrology. Some of the famous initiates are Pythagoras, Plato, Sir Francis Bacon, Isaac Newton, who you may remember from my last talk, is known for being a scientist, but actually he had more writings about hermeticism and interpreting the Bible than anything else. Benjamin Franklin was another initiate of hermeticism. Eliphas Levi, Aleister Crowley. The Thoth deck, the Golden Dawn deck, the Hermetic deck, the Ibis Tarot, Nap Hall deck, Brotherhood of Light deck, which is the one I'll be talking about tonight, and the Universal Light deck are all Hermetic in origin. Now, the word Ta means path, according to our tradition, and Ro means royal. So Tarot means royal path. Moses was a member of the royal family and attended the mystery schools as such. And according to our legend, the initiations were held at the Great Pyramid, and then the initiate was brought to the Sphinx, the subterranean chamber in the Sphinx, to learn the admonitions which corresponded to the major arcanum. And the interesting thing about this is that recently, I would say within the last several years, Dr. Robert Schoch, the scientist who redated the Sphinx to much older than previously thought, has actually discovered a subterranean chamber, rectangular in shape, below the left paw of the Sphinx. And he is endeavoring now to get permission to explore that chamber. He thinks it might be flooded at this point, but we'll keep our fingers crossed now that the politics and the government has changed over. I'm hearing clicking noises, Stephen. Are you still with me?
Yes, I am still here, Ellen. Don't worry about that. It doesn't. It is a little bit distracting, but it doesn't actually transfer to the audio recording. So don't worry about it. But
let me carry on just a little bit longer. The bas reliefs in the subterranean chamber of the Sphinx do relate to the major arcanum, according to our tradition. And so that's basically the history as far as the Church of Light is concerned. And as far as C.C. Zane, who put all this information, is concerned, and you can read about that in a book called The Sacred Tarot by C.C. Zane.
It's the Bible of tarot.
It is the Bible of tarot. I might add also, Stephen, that Thoth might have even come from Atlantis. Now with the catastrophe theories that are swarming around about our much more ancient history as human beings than we've previously thought, it's thought that Thoth, as well as other members of Atlantis, knowing that their culture was to perish, set out missionaries, if you will, or emissaries, maybe is a better word, to disseminate the wisdom, this ancient wisdom, and to store it and keep it secret and pass it along. And that's why it's surmised that alchemy sort of sprang up all over the world at the same time, because it was sort of discovered, or it was presented to earthlings at large, shall we say.
And can I ask you, Allyn, for our listeners, I think a question that does come up is this one: is alchemy real?
Well, I think it's very real. It was certainly practiced in the medieval times, and supposedly there were quite a few alchemists that really did turn gold, base metals into gold, including Sir Isaac Newton, who actually put in his notes that he had done it. And he said something rather quaint like, I reckon this is the point. But, the most important point about alchemy is not, of course, transmuting base metals into gold, although that was certainly important to people. The point of alchemy was to transmute the spirit or the character from our animal instincts, our base animal instincts, to our divine instincts, because man is actually, we are an animal. We are born in animal skin, and we have animal instincts that keep us alive. And we have, the old reptilian brain that pops its ugly head every once in a while. But the point of alchemy is to get our nasty beast under control, and to keep our emotions in check, and to generate goodwill, and to touch the hearts of everyone that we come in contact with, and to be a force for good, and certainly not a force for evil. And I think that tarot certainly it demonstrates that philosophy. It's and our deck in particular is what's wonderful about the Egyptian tradition as opposed to the traditional way of reading tarot is that our deck is completely astrologically assigned. Every card in the deck has an astrological correspondence to it. So the more you know about astrology, the easier it is to read the Brotherhood of Light deck. And that's very helpful, of course. When you're reading traditional decks, a lot of, I think intuition and even psychic, to pull on your psychic abilities is very helpful. But with the Brotherhood of Light deck, certainly the more psychic and intuitive you are, the better. But if you're not, you can rely upon an enormous amount of symbolism in the cards and also in the astrological glyphs that are found on each card.
That's wonderful, Allyn. I love the fact that you can look at the card, see the illustration, the image, but also have that reminder of the astrological correspondence, because many people are using the tarot but not appreciating the astrological correspondences, and I think that, as you said, it's you can use intuition and connect with spirit when you're using cards when you're reading, but it is great to also have the astrological insight. Do you what's the connection then between the astrological symbols, the cards in the major arcana, for example, and alchemy? Is there a connection?
Well, there are certain, alchemy, there are two forms of alchemy. There is, one of them is, and it's a word I always find difficult to pronounce, I think it's spagyrics. And it has to do with herbal medicine. And the other one is metallurgy. And according to the Brotherhood of Light lessons, we go with the metallurgy, the sacred metals. And they correspond to the astrological planets. They call the sacred metals the terrestrial metals, the terrestrial planets, as opposed to the visible planets in the sky. The metals become terrestrial planets. And so, for example, since we have the major arcanum are represented by the planets and the astrological signs of, the signs of the zodiac, we have some cards in the major arcanum that relate directly to a sacred metal. For example, the base metal ore is ruled by Saturn, and it symbolizes the urges of self-interest or selfishness, the urges of selfishness. And we have a card in the deck called the Black Magician, or Satan, or the Devil in other decks. And that card is not necessarily ruled by Saturn in other decks, but it's ruled by Saturn in our decks. And that's the beauty of the correspondences. Let's see, like, 10, I could go through them all for you if you'd like.
That would be wonderful, Allyn, because you read our minds, because we were talking just a little while ago about how wonderful it would be to talk about the cards in the major arcana, and it would be just wonderful to get your view on the cards, starting at the beginning. If you'd like to do that, we would love it.
Okay, that's terrific. I'd love to go through them with you. We'll have to move pretty fast.
Before you do, Allyn, can I ask you just to explain to our listeners why the cards are in that sequence, or what they signify to a person, a human being?
Well, they signify the hero's journey, and it's sometimes called the fool's journey, and that's why the fool in the deck is usually considered. It's usually at the top, with 3 rows of 7 following below, and it's considered the number 0. In the Egyptian deck, the Fool isn't only number 0; it's 0 and 22. It has 2 numbers, and it comes at the end of the cycle. But the idea is that we're born, with certain capabilities, and we work the best we can with them, and we try throughout our lives to develop our characters and to develop our astral bodies and our spiritual bodies along the way. So it's a journey. And as far as the numerical sequence is concerned, there are numerical correspondences, of course, but they get pretty complicated after 10, because after 10 you can start rearranging the numbers in different ways, or you can create the numbers by adding the individual numbers separately, and it gets rather complicated. Now, the Sacred Tarot is a wonderful book for explaining the numbers. And also, there's another book called Blending Astrology, Numerology, and Tarot by Doris Chase Doan.
A brilliant book.
Yeah.
Another Bible that emanated from Church of Light.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I use Blending Astrology, Numerology, and Tarot a lot. It's a very handy little book to have around if you're reading the major arcanum. So I will try to get through these as quickly as I can. There's a lot to talk about, of course, and what I'm about to go through with the majors is just barely scratching the surface. The first arcanum is the Magus, also called the Magician. I spoke for an hour and a half on this one card a couple of years ago.
We'd like that.
So, but I will say that to alchemists, the first matter is a primordial, unorganized state of energy, and it exists in all substances, and it exists in an unmanifested state between energy and matter. And in quantum theory speak, that means wavelength and particle, which are both affected on the subatomic level by just observing them, which makes the study of quantum physics so difficult. So when we keep this in mind, because just thinking about these subatomic particles, we understand that Major Arcanum 1 is probably the most powerful, the most magical card in the deck. It is the first step to spirit. It's number 1, and number 1 in this case symbolizes the wholeness or unity with the absolute or the all. And the key idea with the magician is the power of the mind. And with the power of the mind, we can create or co-create our lives with the great divine. Magician contains the word magi in it. We're all familiar with magi from the Bible. They were the astrologers that came to visit Jesus. And the word magi and magus and even imagination, they all come from the same word, a Chaldean word meaning power of the mind. He is the beginning. He's the wholeness and the oneness, the archetypal and the image of the Creator, if you will, manifesting from the inner planes. So when we think of the magician, we think of consciousness, being conscious, and making conscious plans in our lives, having an idea. Nothing manifests without having the idea first. And nothing, if you look around your bookcases, your books, your computer, everybody had a thought first, and that is the spark of creation, if you will. When we go to Major Arcanum 2, we immediately enter the realm of duality, which is certainly where we are on this planet. We live in a reality of duality. Everything has its opposite. And that's what is needed, because the opposites in their creating agitation with each other creates the need for solution in advance. It's like, the agitation of sand in a pearl, in a oyster creates the pearl. And whereas the magician is standing and he's quite masculine, the veiled Isis or high priestess is sitting, and she is receptive. And when we think of veiled Isis, we think of the subconscious mind. And although she's ruled by Virgo in our. Oh, and by the way, I meant to say that the magician is ruled by Mercury, which is all about mental. As you know, it's all about the mental capabilities. It's about communication and thinking and thought processes and that sort of thing. And veiled Isis is ruled by Virgo, which is also ruled by Mercury, but she also has this subconscious going for her.
So is she receptive, whereas she's passive receptive, whereas the magician is active? Is that correct?
Yeah. She is reflective. She's about our memories and our subconscious mind. She's about dreaming. And, the Egyptians were really keen on lucid dreaming. I don't know if you know that, but they considered lucid dreaming sort of the gateway to the afterlife. And they felt that if you could control your dreams, you could keep your consciousness in the afterlife. So I'm not sure if you want me to give you keywords for these cards or not.
That would be lovely, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, you want the keywords? Okay. Well, then I'll go back to the magician and say that the keywords for him are, thought, planning, will, dexterity, creativity, imagination. He's sometimes called a trickster and an artisan, although not too much in the Egyptian tradition. He's all about reason, logic, logos, and actually intuition in some level. He's more mental than intuitive, but Veiled Ices is more intuitive than mental, but they're both using the same capacity. It's like we split in two in our involution to Earth. We were born, both masculine and feminine, but we have to split in two, and that's part of the dual nature of living here and our experience. So, I would say that for Veiled Ices, it would be all about being receptive, being patient, being quiet, being still, using the memory, unconscious mind, being calm, not taking action, but digesting, those sorts of reflective, passive keywords. In our particular deck, she's also, because she's ruled by Virgo, science comes into play, analysis, labor, love of small pets. You see how these all sort of, when you look at that glyph, it opens up a whole new gateway of possible meanings to the deck. And one thing I'd like to say about keywords is that they're very elusive. You have to, as a reader, you have to sort of develop a relationship with your major arcanum. They mean different things to different people. There are no absolutes involved with tarot, and I was very disturbed to learn this when I first started reading. I just wanted a list of words, and that was that. And yes, you can get started with a list of words, but as you go along and you practice reading, you'll realize that there are many, many ways to interpret these cards. The main idea is to see how they fall in the question, and to listen very carefully to your querent, and to try to make some connections. The third major arcanum is Isis unveiled. She's often called the Empress. In Isis veiled, she has the moon on her head, and she's often related to the Blessed Virgin Mary, if you will. She's a virgin. And in the Isis unveiled, the moon is at her feet. And here she is the Blessed Virgin Mary as a mother. And she is pregnant in most decks. And so the key words are marriage or action. And her number is 3 because 1 and 2 have gotten together to make 3. So now there's a third, there's an infant involved, and the infant is in her belly, if you will. So another key word might be gestation for her. So, see, where should I go with this? I wanted to just say something very interesting about this card. She holds in our deck, and I think in most decks, she holds a wand that has a globe on the top of it. I like to think of it as the old as the world turns, symbol. And I think the spiritual message of this card particularly is how we are constantly co-creating our lives. And as a result, we need constantly to keep our thoughts and actions as pure as we can, because we are creating just as quickly as a pregnancy happens. It happens in a second. Every second we're creating something. So the idea is to keep your heart full of love so that your creations are blessed things and not things that are going to come around and give you trouble in the end. Fruitfulness, birth, abundance, action. These are all words for Isis unveiled. And
she
then
is the Empress
the sovereign
in the Rider-Waite deck, right?
Pardon me?
She is the Empress in the Rider-Waite deck.
Yes, she is the Empress, exactly. I'm glad you reminded me. Because all of these cards have different names. The next card is the Emperor. In our deck, he's called, in the Brotherhood of Light deck, he's called the Sovereign. This is number 4, and here we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 are called the numbers of magic. And this is the numbers of how to manifest something. First, you think about it, and then you sit. You have the idea consciously, and then you live with that idea. You know how we sort of, I know I'm an artist, so I'll think, oh, I want to paint this, but then I'll dream about painting it, or, my subconscious mind will work on it for a while, and all of a sudden I'll know how to do it. And then you birth the thing, or you gestate it, and it has to be around for a while working on it. And then finally it manifests, and manifestation is number 4. It's called, another key word is to realize it, or it becomes real. In Egyptian tarot, the sovereign is ruled by Scorpio. Scorpio rules the male sex organs and sex drives. So further keywords for this card are desire, magnetism, creative energies, control over passions. He's all about sex. And so whenever I see that card, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, is that there's some kind of sexual issue involved or some kind of passion involved. And of course his cohort in the deck is the Empress and the Emperor. And they are creating this wonderful new being. And like the magician, the sovereign is masculine. He poses with his right hand pointing up and his left hand pointing down, and he has a lot of power. And with power comes to mind 2 quotes: absolute power corrupts absolutely. And with power comes responsibility. So when we see this card, we also think of that masculine energy that really has to be directed. Scorpio, as you know, has sort of a spiritual nature, and it has kind of a dark nature if it's not kept in check.
Yeah, I always remember that. Allyn, we're going to take a quick commercial break, if you don't mind. So when we come back in just a moment, we'll carry on with the cards. It's extremely interesting.
Oh, good. Well, I hope so.
Okay,
thank you.
We'll take our break just now.
A new era in psychic services has begun. PsychicAccess.com. You can connect with our psychic advisors by telephone or chat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of our psychic advisors are interviewed, fully verified, and accuracy tested, assuring you quality service. We're living in some very troubled times right now. More and more, the world's problems are affecting us on a personal level. You don't have to deal with this alone. Our highly accurate psychics, caring advisors, and talented mediums can help with situations you are currently experiencing and can let you know what the future may hold for you. All new customers get a free 6-minute reading. All you have to do is register. Why not visit us now and get a free reading at psychicaccess.com.
Well, welcome back, Alan. This is very, very interesting, and it's just wonderful that you're taking us through the major arcana because, as I said, that's something we've been talking about behind the scenes for some time. We really wanted to do that. We've got about 15 minutes, Allyn, and I know that the cards are really complex, and I'd love to hear you speak for an hour and a half about each card because I know I'd learned so much, but we were talking about the Emperor and Scorpio before we took the break, so feel free to pick up where you left off.
Okay, number 6, Arcanum 6 is temptation. We have to do number 5 first, and that is the Hierophant. It's often called the Pope. And the key words here are religion or law, and it is ruled by Jupiter. And I would say that in most traditions, this is not considered a lucky card, but in the Egyptian tarot it is, because the number 5 represents the head and the limbs of a human form. The Hierophant was the high priest who overlooked the initiation rites of the Egyptian mystery schools. And because it's ruled by Jupiter, it's all about charity, charitable acts, and abundance, joyfulness. Religion and law are two things in our life that do give us direction, not always the perfect direction, and we do get hung up on our isms, which is probably the darker side of this card. I would like to point out at this point that we don't do reversals in the Brotherhood of Light deck when they are reversed. It just means that the meaning isn't quite fulfilled. Moving on to number 6, temptation, dilemma, choice. Most of the time it's called the Lovers. This card is ruled by Venus, and most people don't know that the venereal diseases are named after Venus. This card represents a temptation. Usually it relates to lovers or doing something that we know isn't really right for us, but it just feels so good. We want to do it. And we often make choices in our lives that have serious consequences. Many of our choices don't, but some can really affect people for a lifetime. So that's what this card is all about. It's about choice, and it's about discernment as to whether this choice is really right or if it's just easy. So we have to, when this card comes up, we have to consider that. The Venus has to do with the venial system, which is all about peer pressure. And lots of times people make decisions under peer pressure that are not the best for us. The next card, and stop me if you have any questions, because I'm going to keep going through these. There's 22 of them, so there's a lot to cover. The next one is 7, the Conqueror, Chariot, and Victory. It's called the Chariot in most cards. Victory is definitely the key word. And this symbolizes, or actually shows, a young man who is ready to move on. He has experienced some degree of life, and he's made the right choices. He has rules and guidelines from law and religion, and he hasn't been tempted, and so he's ready to go on and test his mettle, so to speak, and move on. It's the last deck of the first row of the major arcanum, so the next row supposedly gets us into the astral cards. The Conqueror is, there's always usually a black horse and a white horse, and it just means that there will be a move involved, sometimes a physical move, sometimes a mental move, and things will, of course, will not always be easy, that there will be some rough times ahead. Let's see, Arcanum 8, the balance, also called justice and equilibrium. Justice and equilibrium would be the key words here. And this card is symbolized by Ma'at. And Ma'at was the goddess that, created order out of chaos. It was Pharaoh's job to pray to Ma'at so that his nation wouldn't fall into, plague and starvation and warfare. It's ruled by Capricorn. You would think it'd be ruled by Libra because of the scales. It is in other decks, but in our deck it's ruled by Capricorn because this has to do with justice and legal situations. So when I see this card, I wonder if there's a lawsuit pending or they're involved with attorneys or some legal action. The Sage comes up next, and it is Arcanum 9. 9 is a very powerful number. It is very powerful in mathematics. It's very magical number, casting out nines. I don't know if you remember that system in grammar school, but it was a way to check to see if your answers were right. And the key words for this major arcanum is wisdom and prudence. And this fellow is the only one in the major arcanum that shows a little sign of aging. He has a couple of wrinkles on him, and so us old folks, we can take some kind of pride in having lived as long as we have, because
they didn't have Botox then, maybe, Allyn.
Pardon me?
Maybe they didn't have Botox at that time. He's also the hermit, though, isn't he? So he probably wouldn't be bothered about Botox because he doesn't go out so much.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So I like in the Universal Weight deck, and I don't know if you're familiar with the images there, but the Fool is standing on a precipice about to fall off. And in the Hermit card, he is standing on the same precipice holding a lamp over because to show the Fool's way back up the hill. And I really like that.
I didn't realize that was specifically associated to showing the Fool the way back up the hill.
The Fool, he's showing the Fool the way back up the hill because, of course, we all fall off the hill many times. And he is shedding a little light on how we recover from our injuries and start over again and learn from our experience and assimilate what we've learned from what chaos has come to us. And if we can learn from our experiences, then it's worth having the experiences. If we make the same mistake over and over again, then it's not helping anybody. And I think that's probably the key, the secret to the Hermit, or the Sage, as he's sometimes called. Now, the Wheel of Fortune is Arcanum 10, and this one means it's ruled by Uranus, which is the planet of upheaval, as you know. And it means sudden change. Now, one of your colleagues asked about the number 10, one of the 10s, which is a minor arcanum relating to this major arcanum, and all it means when it's reversed is that it's not happening as quickly. That's all it means. Sudden change, either for good or for unfortunate incidents, and it's usually brought about by someone new in the querent's life. So when this card comes up in a reading, you know that there's going to be a sudden change of heart, change of mind, change of attitude, change of something that will be brought on by this new person. And you can usually find a court card somewhere that will describe that new person. The next one is the Enchantress, also called the Force or Strength, and she is number 11. This is a very interesting card. This is the number 1, which is the card of the Magus, or the Magician, representing will, and the number 10, which is the next level up, or the next octave up, to form the number 11. Okay, and it has to do with force, spiritual power or fortitude, strength of character, and also the force of nature, which we're constantly battling with all the time. And that's why she's shown there closing the mouth of the lion, because she is trying to control the animal in her. She is enchanting the animal within her, and probably within others. Now, there's a dark side to this card most people don't know about, but in the Church of Light, we call this the 10% solution card. And we do this because it is ruled by Neptune. And what do we know about Neptune as a planet? It's kind of foggy, ethereal. It's not, it's not quite clear. And it's in the depths of, the murky waters. It's murky. So the 10% solution card could also mean that the querent is running up against someone who's not being quite honest with them. Someone, like a used car salesman that's not giving them the best deal that he possibly can. Someone that's lying to them. And I told you with the Magus, or the Magician, that one of his keywords is trickster. Well, it doesn't really show up in the Magus so much as it shows up in this card, the Enchantress, sort of the female side of the Magus. And the next card is the Martyr. This is our Major Arcanum 12. I'm not going to talk about the numbers so much now because they get a little complicated. But this is a very, very sad card. And the name of itself, a hanged man, martyr, sacrifice, expiation, these are all very sad words. Slavery, or being enslaved. And, of course, in the old days, it meant slavery. But in today, it would be more like a habit, like substance abuse can enslave, or a belief system can enslave, gang members can enslave. It could be a physical imprisonment, like prison or an insane asylum of some kind, or hospital. All of those are forms of enslavement. Marriages oftentimes are very, powerful forms of enslavery. So when we see this card when it's hung up like that, it can be also hung up on an idea. Because Pisces, this card is ruled by Pisces, is all about believing. I believe, right? And so we can get very hung up on our ideas. Sometimes when we lose our faith, we have trouble. It's a very disturbing time when people lose their faith. Now, this is the only card in our Major Arcanum that has a meaning. It's not the only one. There's two. There's this one and the Fool. They have different meanings, whether they're right side up or reversed. And when the hangman is reversed, he is getting mana from heaven. So in other words, the money is falling into his hands, or the blood is pouring back into his veins. And this shows that through martyrdom or to sacrifice, you're gaining much from it, like joining the Peace Corps, for example, or giving up your a kidney for your loved one, that sort of thing. Your sacrifice is bringing hope and faith and healing to someone else and to yourself as well. The next card, the Reaper, Death, Transformation, number 13. This card is very interesting in terms of alchemy because it's ruled by Aries, and that was the time of the year when all alchemical processes were started in the springtime, Aries. And the first process was burning or calcification, of the matter. And of course, on the death or transformation card, we see a skeleton, and we see him reaping usually heads and feet. And this card is not about death. It only is. Of course, you would never ever read it like it was death, even though you might suspect it is. It's always read as transformation or the death of a chapter in a person's life, or maybe a relationship, or maybe an attitude, or the death of a friendship, or termination at work, that sort of thing. And of course, we know that nothing new can happen in life unless we get rid of the old. And so I like to think of the Grim Reaper as the Grim Raker. He's raking up the dead leaves so that the new growth.
Yeah. That's a great way of looking at it, Allyn. So he's allowing new growth. Well, Allyn, we're out of time, I'm afraid, but it has been wonderful to have you with us, and I think that that's a great card to end on because I think that many people misunderstand that card. So the message about that one is extremely important.
Yeah. Well, I think the next time I come on, if I'm invited, we can ask about very specific, or talk about very specific cards that people have questions about. And, because they are so complicated and deep, these cards.
I know, but it's been, your overview's been incredibly insightful, Allyn, and we will direct our listeners to your website, which is an incredibly good resource for understanding the cards. I want to thank you for joining us again, Allyn. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you here.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen. It's been my pleasure. And, if you have any questions at all, you can always contact me. You have my email.
And I will look forward to seeing you in New Mexico next year.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. All right, well, we'll see you then.
Thank you, Allyn. It's wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Stephen.
All the best.
Hello, my name is Res Miranda. If you're having relationship, career, or life issues, I'm inviting you to experience what it's like to have access to professional, highly accurate psychics and spiritual advisors you can trust to care and help you. Register now to get your free 6-minute reading by telephone or chat. Get answers. Get access. Psychic access. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. PsychicAccess.com.
Girlfriend. She sounds better than